Really interesting fight on our main card, UFC 260. As always, one half of your hosting duo, Craig Allen. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Craig Allen FNP. With me, as always, Matt Allen. You can find him on the respective socials at Matt Allen FNP. And Matt, we got one of your guys, the silent assassin Vicente Luque, taking on, well, really, when I was a fight fan, one of my guys in the chosen one, Tyron Woodley. And it might sound silly because a lot of people, you look at the recent losing streak, you look at the way that he fought against Kamaru Usman when he lost his belt. But there was a time when Tyron Woodley was in the hearts, minds of many. And then he got big, and then things didn't really go all that well, and the fights weren't all that interesting, and a lot of people got turned off at Tyron Woodley. Now, a lot of people kind of sweep that Darren Till fight under the rug and forget about it, but at one point or another, Tyron Woodley was a mother effer, and you watch some of those fights. I know a lot of people like to talk about the Josh Koscheck fight. That was back in November of 2013. We're a ways removed from that. The fight against Carlos Condit was absolutely insane for as long as it lasted. Then he goes on, beats Robbie Lawler, has a draw against Wonderboy. They rematch. He beats Damian Maia in a boring fight, again. And then the Till fight. Then he loses to Usman. He loses to Burns. Emphatically, Burns took him down. Always a Tyron Woodley staple was his takedown defense. And then he fights Colby Covington and gets totally outclassed. Now he's fighting Vicente Luque. Matt, on Vicente Luque's record between exhibition and pro, he has a loss to Haider Hassan, who's barely even a 500 fighter, and he knocked out Thiago Santos, that Thiago Santos, at 170 pounds. The guy's had an absolutely crazy career. If you look at the names on Vicente Luque's record, nowhere close to Tyron Woodley. But wins against Bilal Muhammad, Nico Price, 2 times. Brian Barberena, crazy fight. Derek Krantz, Mike Perry, and his last time out, Randy Brown. And listen, I'm a lot higher on Randy Brown than most people. He's a very long-rangey striker. He has very, very deceptive jiu-jitsu. And he's just an all-around good fighter. He just doesn't really get a lot of credit. Vicente poured it on him and looked amazing in that fight. So, for Vicente Luque, he comes into this one at about a 2-1 favorite, which is kind of crazy. He opened at 2-1. He's now minus 257. For Woodley, open 205, about 205. So the odds are kind of weird in this one. It's wild to me that Tyron Woodley's fighting in the year of our Lord, 2021, at a 2-1 underdog to Vicente Luque.
So let me take you back. We're going to have to go all the way back to UFC 205. The first time Woodley fought Wonderboy. One of the first fights on that card was Vicente Luque versus Bilal Muhammad, when no one knew who either one of those guys was. Luque, of course, knocks him out with one of the nicest check left hooks you're ever going to see. And he just kind of is off to the races from that point on. You look at the losses that Luque has in the UFC, he's only lost to Stephen Wonderboy Thompson and Leon Edwards in the UFC. That's insane. That is number 3 and 5, I believe, respectively, in the UFC rankings, and that means a lot. And the other great thing about Luque, too, and I sound like I'm fanboying a little bit, listen, I've been a fan of this guy for a while, and he's not a fighter that I ever thought would be at the top of the UFC like he has been. And for the fact that he knocks out Muhammad, loses to Leon Edwards emphatically, just kind of gets out-wrestled in that fight. I remember going into that Nico Price fight, I was like, okay, hopefully we see a better version. Mops the floor with him. And right now, Luque is on, and I'm going to bring him up for the 3rd time because he's been fresh in my mind because I wanted to bring him up for this video. When Charles Oliveira beat a bunch of guys who weren't ranked and finished them all, we were like, okay, he's good, but we don't know how good he is. And then he fights Tony Ferguson, beats the brakes off him in a not competitive fight whatsoever. And now we realize, like, oh, Charles Oliveira is that guy. Luque is on a very similar winning streak to Charles Oliveira. When you put him in there with guys who aren't in the top 15, he's going to hurt them. Let's just be honest. If a guy isn't ranked, he shouldn't be fighting Vicente Luque. He's got absurd Muay Thai, very technical fighter, and something that gets brought up a lot about Luque, and it's important. One of the greatest chins in MMA history.
Oh, he gets cracked in every fight. And if you want to see him get cracked, Brian Barberena fight.
Brian Barberena hits him clean on the chin multiple times. So does Wonderboy. Like, he can get hit. The thing is, he gets back up to his feet. And Wonderboy rocked him a number of times in that fight. But Luque was, I'm going to get hurt. I'm going to get back up. He just has such great recovery and a really good chin. And normally he is quite defensively sound. He will get into firefights just because that's kind of what his style is sort of bred towards, if you will. I'm just kind of worried for Tyron Woodley. I am. This is the first time he's fought a guy who's not going in. I should say, the first time he's fought someone in this version of Tyron Woodley's career where they're not just going in there to look to take him down. You kind of knew what Usman was going to do if he was going to beat Woodley. He's great at wrestling. He's got a lot of volume. His cardio is insane. And I think he showed all 3 of those things in that fight. Burns, sort of similar. He's a really good striker, but we know how great his ground game is. The thing that concerned me in the Burns fight was that Woodley had never had a chin issue. He's had one of the better chins really in MMA history up until that point. And I think Gilbert Burns hits hard, don't get me wrong. Burns hurt him multiple times with strikes in that fight, and it's a little concerning because Gilbert Burns takes a lot of his striking from Vicente Luque. They're very close training partners. They are best friends. They train together at Stanford MMA. It's a little concerning when a guy who throws, I'm going to say a lazy left hook in Gilbert Burns, he just throws like sort of a wild overhand left. Luque does that exact same technique, but Luque's been striking his whole life, whereas Gilbert Burns is a lifelong grappler. He's just sort of incorporated the striking as he's been into MMA, where Luque's kind of the opposite. He's got great head and arm chokes on the ground, a really nice Darce choke. Go back and watch the first Nico Price fight if you want to see that. Just a really nice setup, too, after he hurts him with the hands. Luque's career has just always been a really good progression. He always seems like he's getting better. And for Woodley, could the Woodley that fought Wonderboy at UFC 205 in the co-main event come out here and crack Luque with an overhand right and put him down? He could, but my issue is that was almost 4 years ago. That was over 4 years ago, which is wild to think about. And the Tyron Woodley that we've been getting, yes, he's going in there fighting grapplers, but it's not even like he's defending the takedowns, and he's not even letting his hands go. And it's wild because there was a time, well, before he fought Usman, Woodley had the best takedown defense in UFC history, not just in welterweight history, in UFC history. I don't know what the exact stat is now, but I'd imagine it's not the best.
87%, still good.
Still very good. But again, now we kind of know that when he does fight those upper echelon wrestlers, they're able to take him down. I don't think that's going to be an issue in this fight whatsoever. I think if Vicente Luque only trained his wrestling in this training camp, he couldn't take Tyron Woodley down. I would completely get rid of that variable. I think Woodley needs his own takedowns in this fight to win it, and that's just a version of Tyron Woodley we haven't seen in a long time. Because Luque, the only weakness he really has in his game is the fact that his takedown defense is not incredible. It's still good, don't get me wrong. He's still good with like the Randy Browns, for instance. He can defend the takedown and force them to become a striker. But Woodley, when he does decide to really go for a nice ground game, he's got the wrestling background. He's got the jiu-jitsu black belt, which is cool that they gave it to him after he submitted Darren Till. But again, we're talking about all these great things that Tyron Woodley has done in the past, and I know MMA is very much a what have you done for me lately kind of sport, but it's true, like Tyron Woodley, what have you done for me lately? You haven't won a round in your last 3 fights, and you're 0 for 14 in rounds.
Tyron Woodley's last 3-round fight was back January 31st, 2015 at a catchweight against thick boy Kelvin Gastelum, who missed weight emphatically in that one. 2015. It's been 6 years since he fought a 3-round fight. That's amazing. And credit to Tyron Woodley. He's had that many main events, so it's awesome to see, but it just sucks to see where his career's gone because out of those 3 losses, the ship has sailed on, probably another title shot. You have to beat Luque, and then you have to work your way up. Look at Wonderboy. He keeps winning. He's not anywhere closer to the title shot. He beat Luque too. Not really all that close. So if you look at it from that perspective, again, Luque is just like that Billy Talent song. There's nothing to lose when no one knows your name. And
I know your name.
A lot of people are getting to know his name. The funny thing about this one, too, for Woodley, he's taken on that level of competition since Strikeforce. Names that you know and recognize. Jay Huron's on that record. If you look at it, though, the strike differential, 2.33 given strikes landed per minute for Woodley to 2.72 taken. It's a negative differential. For Luque, 5.72 to 5.82. It's also negative, but the output's crazy in his fights. You don't love to see all that damage against a lesser level of competition. He wins the majority of the fights that he should win. He's one of those kind of guys like a boogeyman that nobody wants to fight. He's like welterweight's Ryan Hall. But for Vicente Luque, it is a very interesting fight. And we talked about the overall odds. You've got Woodley about a 2-1 underdog. You've got Luque at about a minus 250 or thereabouts. Let's look at the Tapology votes, Matt. 1,307 of them, 78% Luque, 48% by decision, 45% by knockout. The 22% that have Woodley, 2/3 of them by decision. So overall, what are you thinking here?
So I do agree with the odds. That's the first thing. It's kind of wild to say that Vicente Luque should be a 2-1 favorite over Tyron Woodley, but if you just look at what both guys have done in the past couple of years, it's hard to say Woodley should be closer with the odds. I'm going to bring up a little bit of a prop in this fight. Vicente Luque's won every single one of his UFC fights by stoppage except for one. And that one fight against Mike Perry, if it had gone on for another minute, the doctor would have stopped it because of how bad his nose was crushed at the end of that from the flying knee of Vicente Luque. So all but one of his fights have come by way of stoppage. I see it going that way again. I really do. If we get that version of Tyron Woodley who puts his back up against the cage, he gets slapped, I will say earlier than like the 3rd round, because that version of Tyron Woodley is going to really get hurt in this fight. If Woodley is a striker in the center of the cage. I don't think he's going to win this fight, but I think it will at least help him avoid some of the big power shots of Luque coming in. But if Woodley just backs up to the cage like we've seen him do 1,000 times, that's kind of what Luque wants you to do anyways. Go back and watch the Nico Price fight. Go back and really watch any of Luque's fights. If he gets you up against the cage, he unloads on you like few fighters do in the UFC. And I do think Luque is going to land a big combo and probably put Woodley away with a shot. It hurts me to say because, again, I remember those years when Tyron Woodley was on top of the world, but now it seems like he's been falling in and out of love with the sport of MMA. So I've got to pick Vicente Luque in this one.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's just a shame because, again, you asked Craig before 2018, before Fight Night picks, Tyron Woodley all day, 100%. I love to watch Tyron Woodley fights. But the guy that we've gotten in the last three, you get backed up by Gilbert Burns, world-class fighter. So's Usman, so's Covington. These are generational talents, and that might sound like I'm really putting them on a pedestal. But again, where the sport is right now, these guys are so good at what they do. And I mean, you put them years ago, they would have been great. They would have been champs.
Oh, last thing for me. Also, Gilbert Burns beat Tyron Woodley. I just mentioned the striking of Luque. They're also best friends and train together. If there's anyone out there who can give you a good game plan to beat Tyron Woodley, it's probably the guy who's already done it.
Be weird in a 3-round atmosphere, and Burns better wrestler than Luque, but still, if Woodley wrestles and if Woodley gets on top, the ground and pound's going to be insane. If he decides to strike, could be insane. But both of us going, Matt, with Vicente Luque to get the win. Really looking forward to this card. We got a great main event coming up. You're not going to want to miss it. You have Stipe Miocic taking on Francis Ngannou. So keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, Matt. As we always say, let's get into it.